Today, the hype around electric vehicles is coming to an end. Remember when we told you production was being halted by several companies? Well, it has become a hot topic of discussion, and virtually everyone, including CNBC, is now talking about it. In a surprising turn of events, many automotive giants are steering away from the EV frenzy that once dominated the headlines. Tesla, General Motors, Mercedes, and other up-and-coming manufacturers are starting to give up their massive EV plans. But what's driving this shift in strategy, and what does it spell for the future of eco-friendly mobility? Before we get started, kindly drop a like and subscribe to our channel. After the introduction of the Nissan Leaf and the Tesla Roadster, EVs have since dominated the automotive industry. However, we are beginning to experience a switch in recent years. Automakers have been dazzling with ambitious EV projections and eye-catching growth targets. Meanwhile, investors enjoyed the soaring valuations. Yet as the hype fades, a new narrative is starting to emerge, one that celebrates consumer diversity. From Ford and General Motors to Mercedes-Benz and Volkswagen, many industry giants are dialing back their electric aspirations. Amidst these changes, the industry charts a path towards a more balanced vehicle portfolio, involving traditional gas-powered rides with hybrids and electric components. This is a subtle step to achieving an all-electric future. According to reports made by CNBC, the VW of America CEO Pablo Ducey claims this balanced approach is the best way. This is a motive towards bringing hybrid vehicles back to the U.S. Meanwhile, GM is starting to pioneer the shift towards EV among traditional automakers, while introducing plug-in hybrid electric vehicles to complement their existing lineup of EVs and gas-powered cars. Similarly, other manufacturers like Hyundai Motors, Kia, Toyota Motors, and potentially Volkswagen are exploring various levels of electrification through their vehicle ranges. Let's make one thing clear. While consumer interest in EVs hasn't matched executives' initial expectations, the sales of these vehicles are still projected to rise significantly in the coming years. According to Cox Automotive estimates, U.S. EV sales hit a record of 1.2 million units last year, capturing 7.6% of the total market share. Analysts also predicted this share to surge to between 30 and 39% by the end of the decade. Marin Jaja, Ford Motors' chief operating officer of the company's EV division, acknowledged the recent surge in EV demand during 2021 and 2022, but noted that it hasn't maintained that anticipated momentum. In a recent CNBC interview, Jaja stated, "It's still growing, but not nearly at the rate we thought it might have in 21 and 22. Meanwhile, Ford had to stop deliveries of the electric Ford F-150 Lightning model just last month due to insufficient consumer demand. This sentiment can be noticed in the automotive industry, with companies like General Motors, Mercedes-Benz, Volkswagen, Jaguar Land Rover, and Aston Martin readjusting their strategies to align with the reality that most consumers aren't currently interested in EVs. Even Tesla, dominating the U.S. EV market with an estimated 55% share in 2023, is bracing for a potential slowdown in growth. CEO Elon Musk cautioned in late January that the company might experience a notably lower rate of growth in the foreseeable future. The move towards a diversified vehicle lineup, including gas-powered, hybrid, and fully electric models, mirrors the present dynamics of the market. In essence, consumers are showing little interest and reluctance to invest in electric vehicles, regardless of the aspirations of the Biden administration and advocates for climate action. Through offering a variety of vehicle choices, automakers are returning to the principle of empowering consumers to make decisions aligned with their individual needs and preferences, rather than pursuing a futile government-driven effort to impose a uniform solution. Did you ever think EVs would suddenly displace gas vehicles that fast? Various automakers have set ambitious targets regarding the transition to electric vehicles. For instance, Alfa Romeo, owned by Stellantis, plans to make its entire vehicle lineup electric by 2027. Similarly, Jaguar Land Rover and Volvo aimed for full electrification by 2030, while GM intends to offer solely electric consumer vehicles by 2035. Brands like Buick and Cadillac, under GM, are striving to achieve this transition even earlier, with exclusivity to EVs 5 years prior. Honda Motor aims to sell only EVs and fuel cell-powered vehicles in North America by 2040. Even specialized brands such as Lotus and Bentley have announced EV-exclusive targets. While these automakers haven't officially altered their long-term objectives, there has been a noticeable change in their approach and communication regarding these goals. Companies are closely monitoring factors like consumer adoption, global emissions regulations, and EV charging infrastructure to shape their future plans. The Department of Transport has officially announced the implementation of a zero-emissions vehicle mandate, stipulating that manufacturers must ensure 1/5 of car sales and 10% of van sales are electric starting next year. Despite delaying the ban on the sale of new petrol and diesel vehicles from 2030 to 2035, the government has decided to proceed with the ZEV mandate targets. Business Secretary Kimi Bandernock hinted to the BBC last week that electric vehicle sales will be emphasized starting in 2024, with a gradual increase each year thereafter. Transport Secretary Mark Harper has now confirmed the specific targets for manufacturers, which will escalate annually. By 2030, 80% of new cars and 70% of new vans sold in Great Britain must be zero emission, ultimately reaching 100% by 2035. During the initial half of 2023, electric vehicles accounted for 16% of all newly purchased cars, surpassing the proposed 22% target for EV sales, with only 11 car manufacturers, with 1/3 of UK EV sales concentrated among 3 prominent brands. Leading the charge are manufacturers like BYD, GWM ORA, MG, Polestar, Smart, and Tesla, whose model lineups predominantly consist of electric vehicles. BMW, Cupra, Jaguar, Porsche, and Volvo are either nearing or have already met the target based on current registration data. Meanwhile, brands such as Alfa Romeo, Dacia, and Seat lack EV offerings, but being part of larger automotive groups, they might leverage credit-sharing arrangements. Japanese automakers Honda, Mazda, and Toyota Lexus face a unique challenge, as the majority of their sales stem from internal combustion engine models. Similarly, Ford leans heavily towards ICE vehicles, with EVs constituting just 2% of its registrations in the initial half of 2023. Although Stellantis brands like Citroën, Peugeot, and Vauxhall boast several electric vehicles in their lineups, these EV registrations represent only 15% of the group's overall sales. Since initially committing to an all-electric timeline in January 2021, GM CEO Mary Barra and other executives have emphasized that customer demand will be a significant driver of their strategy. Despite this, the 2035 goal remains the cornerstone of their plan. Cadillac now plans to offer a complete lineup of EVs, although it may not cease production of all gas-powered models by 2030. In the long run, the future direction of EV strategies in the industry could undergo significant changes in the coming months, influenced by various political factors, including the finalization of fuel economy and emission standards by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. One key motivator behind traditional automakers' push for EV adoption, especially by the Detroit Three, has been the necessity to meet federal regulations on vehicle emissions and fuel efficiency, thus avoiding hefty penalties. According to CNBC, proposals are currently being evaluated by the Biden administration, aiming to increase fuel economy standards up to 2032, might result in over $14 billion in fines for automakers based on the current fuel efficiency levels of their vehicle fleets, as estimated by the Alliance for Automotive Innovation, representing major automakers in the U.S. Last year, the American Automotive Policy Council penned a separate letter to federal regulators, forecasting hefty fines for automakers if stringent regulations were enforced. GM facing $6.5 billion, Stellantis facing $3 billion, and Ford about $1 billion. Representing Detroit automakers, the council highlighted the significant costs involved. However, shifting strategies carry their own financial burdens. Automakers heavily invested in EV infrastructure might incur losses or require increased capital to support alternative production lines. Yet lacking consumer demand leaves them with limited alternatives. The effectiveness of hybrids and plug-in hybrids in meeting potential regulations remains uncertain, given that the standards were tailored for rapid EV adoption. Regardless, automakers must tailor their product mix to comply with federal guidelines to chart a sustainable path forward. Automakers' fuel efficiency ratings hinge on the collective mix of vehicles sold. Vehicles with superior fuel efficiency and lower emissions contribute positively to the automaker's overall rating, emphasizing the importance of environmentally friendly models. As the pace of EV adoption lags behind expectations, Biden is anticipated to revise certain targets integral to his climate change agenda. Looking ahead, the U.S. presidential election in November casts a shadow of uncertainty. If Donald Trump secures re-election, he may reduce or eliminate fuel economy mandates, as he did during his initial term. A potential rollback of these standards in January could prolong the dominance of gas-powered and hybrid models on the market. Meanwhile, automakers in Europe grapple with stringent EV regulations set by governments. These regulations, aiming to phase out traditional fossil fuel vehicles by 2035, face opposition, with calls from conservative groups like the European People's Party to abandon the ban. While every car company is hopping on the hybrid approach, what role will these advancements play in the post-hype era of EVs? We'd love to know your thoughts in the comments section. Also, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe to our channel.